You're listening to the Everything Jewish 10 Minutes at a Time podcast, where you'll learn about every Jewish topic imaginable in about 10 minutes. As always, here's my quick disclaimer. My Hebrew pronunciations are about as accurate as a GPS in a tunnel. If I butcher Shabbatai or Zvi, just roll your eyes gently and forgive me. Today's topic is Shabbatai Zvi and Sabbateanism. If you've never heard of him, think of him as the 17th century version of a viral TikTok sensation, except instead of trending dance moves, he claimed to be the long-awaited Jewish Messiah. And instead of lasting 15 seconds of fame, his movement shook the Jewish world for decades. This story involves prophecy, betrayal, mysticism, and yes, even some pretty shocking breaking of the rules. It's one of those chapters in Jewish history that's both fascinating and tragic, but also a cautionary tale about what happens when charisma meets mass desperation in turbulent times. Buckle up, because this one is wild. Shabbatai Zvi was born in Smyrna, today's Izmir, Turkey, in 1626. This was a time when Jewish communities across Europe and the Ottoman Empire were suffering from persecution, pogroms, and instability. The memory of the brutal Khmelnytsky massacres in Eastern Europe was still raw. Jews were yearning for redemption, and in walked this magnetic, somewhat eccentric young man who knew Kabbalah, sang beautifully, and radiated mystery. Early on, he declared himself the Messiah, drawing on mystical readings of the Zohar and other Kabbalistic texts. Mainstream rabbis, understandably, were skeptical. But messianic excitement was contagious. Letters spread through Jewish communities faster than viral memes do today, and by the 1660s, Jews from Morocco to Poland were whispering that maybe, just maybe, redemption was at hand. Imagine getting WhatsApp messages saying, "Pack your bags, Messiah's here." That's what it felt like. It was a global religious hype train, centuries before Twitter. What made Shabbatai Zvi so different wasn't just the claim of being Messiah. Many had done that. It was the scale of his following and the radical theology that developed around him. Together with his prophet, Nathan of Gaza, he taught that redemption would come through shocking, even paradoxical acts. This is where the word antinomianism comes in, a fancy term meaning against the law. In traditional Judaism, commandments, mitzvot, are non-negotiable. Keep kosher, celebrate holidays, follow halacha. Shabbatai and his followers, however, said that in the Messianic age, the old rules no longer applied. They flipped the script. Fast days turned into feast days, forbidden foods could be eaten, and sins could be reinterpreted as holy acts. It's like announcing that finals week has been canceled, and everyone automatically gets an A, but on a cosmic scale. For mainstream Jews, this was shocking, even blasphemous. For his followers, it was electrifying, proof that something world-changing was happening. Let's pause on that for a second. Antinomianism wasn't just rule-breaking for fun. It was theology. The idea was that to repair the brokenness of the world, one had to descend into darkness and transform it. So things that looked like sins were secretly acts of redemption. Sounds edgy, right? But it created chaos. Mainstream rabbis warned that abandoning the commandments would unravel Judaism itself. Shabbatai's followers, however, saw this as liberation from centuries of suffering. Imagine living under crushing persecution and suddenly being told, "Hey, God's flipping the script. It's party time." That message was irresistible to many. This is why Sabbateanism spread so fast. It wasn't just a movement. It was a revolution against the weight of tradition, sold as the next stage of God's plan. And when you mix desperation with hope and a dash of rebellion, you get fireworks. Entire communities started reorganizing their religious calendars and lives around Shabbatai's proclamations. But then, plot twist. In 1666, Shabbatai Zvi was arrested by the Ottoman Sultan. Given the choice between death or conversion to Islam, he shocked everyone by converting. Yep, the self-declared Messiah became a Muslim. Imagine the collective gasp. For many Jews, this was the end, proof he was a fraud. Communities that had sold their belongings to move to the Holy Land were devastated. But here's the strange part. Thousands of followers didn't give up. Instead, they doubled down. They claimed his conversion was part of the divine plan, a mystical descent into darkness that would ultimately bring redemption. It's like when your favorite superhero suddenly becomes a villain in the movies, and fans rush online to argue, "No, it's all part of the arc. You'll see."
Cozy traditions feel good, especially this time of year. And that includes changing up your makeup look for fall. From lashes for days with the viral liquid lash extension mascara to enhancing a smoky eye with your favorite shade of brilliant eye brightener. Thrive Causemetics is your go-to for completing every fall look. Whether you want a simple, just gotta get out the door routine, or fall glam that wows from the office to all your favorite fall festivities, you'll always look and feel radiant with Thrive Causemetics. Plus, every product is 100% vegan, cruelty-free, and made with clean, skin-loving ingredients. And for every product purchased, Thrive Causemetics donates to help communities thrive. So every time you use your favorite Thrive Causemetics product, you're helping communities you care about too. Complete your fall look. Go to thrivecosmetics.com/cozy for an exclusive offer of 20% off your first order. That's Thrive Causemetics, CAUSEMETICS.com/cozy.
Nathan of Gaza spun theological explanations to keep the movement alive. Shabbatai himself lived out his days as a Muslim courtier, but his legend only grew. In Jewish history, this was a religious earthquake. After Shabbatai's conversion, the movement splintered. Some abandoned him completely. Others formed secret sects, continuing to believe he was the Messiah. These underground groups became known as Sabbateans. They kept Jewish rituals outwardly, but added radical reinterpretations in private. Over time, some became the Donma, a crypto-Sabbatean community in the Ottoman Empire who outwardly lived as Muslims while secretly preserving Sabbatean traditions. Their rituals often included symbolic reversals of Jewish law, like eating on fast days or reciting blessings backwards, as a sign of entering the New Age. This was miles apart from mainstream Judaism, which insisted on halacha as binding. Sabbatean communities blurred the lines between Judaism and Islam, public and secret life. That tension, living double identities, made them mysterious and controversial. And remarkably, traces of these groups lasted for centuries. Historians have documented Donma communities in Turkey even into the 20th century, long after Shabbatai's death in 1676. Mainstream Judaism reacted strongly against Sabbateanism. Rabbis across Europe issued bans, excommunications, and denunciations. For them, Shabbatai's antinomianism wasn't just mistaken, it was dangerous, threatening the very survival of Torah observance. Think about it. If everyone decides the commandments no longer matter, Judaism dissolves. The trauma of Shabbatai's failure made rabbis extra cautious about messianic claims afterward. You can see echoes of this in how skeptical Jewish leaders were when Hasidism appeared a century later. Some feared it might be another Sabbatean-style upheaval. And yet, Sabbateanism refused to vanish. Secret followers popped up in places like Poland, Italy, and the Balkans. Even in the 18th century, new self-declared messiahs like Jacob Frank drew heavily from Sabbatean ideas, blending antinomian theology with mystical charisma. In other words, Shabbatai's movement didn't just collapse, it mutated, leaving a long, complicated shadow across Jewish history. So how recent were Sabbatean communities? Surprisingly recent. The Donma in Turkey survived as a distinct crypto community well into the 1900s, with some reports suggesting remnants even in the late 20th century. They maintained unique rituals, marriages within the group, and a belief in Shabbatai's messianic role, though often in heavily reinterpreted ways. Some historians even argue that echoes of Sabbatean identity shaped aspects of Turkish politics and culture. Within Jewish communities, traces of Sabbatean ideas persisted for generations, sometimes hidden, sometimes resurfacing in mystical movements. While today you won't find official Shabbataians handing out flyers, the historical memory remains vivid. The story is regularly retold in Jewish history classes as one of the greatest cautionary tales about messianic movements. The very idea that a Messiah could abolish the Torah instead of fulfill it still shocks. And yet, that was precisely what gave the movement its rebellious energy. It was Judaism turned upside down. Why does this story matter today? First, it shows how deeply hope for redemption can shape communities under pressure. Jews in the 17th century desperately wanted relief from suffering, and Shabbatai offered a dazzling, if ultimately false, promise. Second, it reminds us how dangerous charisma without accountability can be. A leader who claims to cancel God's commandments is basically holding the delete key on an entire religion. Finally, it highlights how movements don't simply vanish when leaders fail, They adapt, sometimes in surprising ways. Shabbatai's conversion didn't end Sabbateanism. It reshaped it into secret, long-lasting communities. And that's why historians still study it, as a case study in mass movements, radical theology, and the thin line between faith and chaos. For Jews, it's also a warning. Messianic fervor is powerful, but it can lead down strange and destructive paths if not grounded in tradition and humility. So to wrap it all up, Shabbatai Zvi was a 17th century Jewish mystic whose messianic claims ignited worldwide excitement, then heartbreak when he converted to Islam. His radical antinomian theology, breaking Jewish law as a form of redemption, set him apart from mainstream Judaism, creating sects that persisted in secret for centuries. From the ecstatic highs of 1666 to the long-lived underground communities of the Donma, his story is a roller coaster of faith, betrayal, and resilience. While most Jews today view Shabbatai as a cautionary tale, his movement remains one of the most dramatic episodes in Jewish history. If you ever need proof that religious hype can outlast even the most shocking failure, Shabbatai Zvi is Exhibit A. Thanks for listening to this episode of Everything Jewish 10 minutes at a time. And remember, sometimes the best way to protect tradition is to learn from the times it nearly unraveled. Stay curious, stay skeptical, and I'll see you in the next episode.